can't believe I'm here, playing for my life tonight.
I can't believe I'm here, I made it, I'm playing for my life tonight. I'm a shining light. I can't believe I'm here. I can't believe I'm here, playing for our life tonight. Yeah, I'm playing for our life tonight.
Welcome, friends, to Kingdom Driven Sports. Thanks for joining me today. Today we're going to be talking about the Week 2 NFL game results, how I did with my predictions, and again, we're going to be doing the Nailed It, Sailed It, Failed It segment, where I go through some of my predictions and see either how right I was or how wrong I was. But I definitely wanted to talk about, in this case, the games of the week, because there were two that really stood out for me. The first one was, of course, that overtime battle between the New York Giants and the Dallas Cowboys. That was a surprisingly high-scoring game. I did not expect flashes of the old Russell Wilson to be present in that game, but he definitely showed up to play ball. He had 450 yards and 3 touchdowns. It was pretty incredible to see him perform at a level that we really haven't seen him perform since his days in Seattle. And then, of course, you had the young sophomore receiver, I guess his second year, Malik Neighbors, really breaking out with a 9-reception game, 167 yards and 2 touchdowns. And I did not expect that from the Giants for sure, especially after their showing last week. But I don't know if it was because it's a divisional game where the Cowboys and Giants, they have a rivalry that I remember going back to the days of like Tony Romo and Eli Manning battling out, maybe even before then. But then on Dallas's side, you had Dak Prescott. He was 38 for 52 for 361 yards, had 2 touchdowns as well, and had some help from the backfield with Javonte Williams, providing almost 100 yards, 97 yards and a touchdown, and CeeDee Lamb having a CeeDee Lamb game. I'm surprised he didn't score, but he still had over 100 yards, 112 yards on 9 receptions. But that was a very exciting game that went into overtime, and then, of course, was won by the Dallas Cowboys on a field goal by Brandon Aubrey, who hit one to tie the game at the end of regulation from 64 yards. It's crazy how long these field goals are getting. And then hit a game-winning one from 46 yards. So that was a fantastic game. The other game I want to talk about was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the Houston Texans. That also came down to the wire. It did not go into overtime, but it came down pretty much to the last play. Baker Mayfield showed up again and did really well. I'm so glad to see him doing well in Tampa Bay. He seemed to have revived his career, as I mentioned before in another video. And he had not eye-popping numbers, but he had a really good game. He was 25 for 38, 215 yards with 2 touchdowns. Bucky Irving helped carry some of that load with 71 yards on the ground. Their defense was up to the task of stopping that Houston offense. It was a great game. Baker Mayfield led them down the field on the last drive of the game and was able to score with just a few seconds left. Basically, Houston would have had to run back a kickoff for a touchdown to win that game, and of course that didn't happen. But it was a really good game, a defensive battle where both defenses were making plays. It was a great game between two pretty solid teams. The Buccaneers, again, I have them winning the NFC South. The Houston Texans, there are some concerns there, but they really put themselves in a position to try to win that game, and it looked like they might. But then again, as I mentioned, Baker Mayfield was able to lead a drive. I think it was less than 2 minutes, and have it end up in a touchdown run by White. So, great game. Emeka Egbuka, his stock is rising. He's seeming to be one of the top receivers to come out of this last year's draft. And I think Baker Mayfield is enjoying having him as a weapon. But those two games, the Dallas Giants game and the Buccaneers Texans game, fantastic games. In many ways, I wasn't expecting. Like I said, especially with the Giants, I was not expecting that. But that's the cool thing about the NFL. You get different results week to week, and teams can show you how resilient they are and how from one week to the next they can turn it on. Again, Russell Wilson, I didn't think we would ever see that again from him. I thought he maybe would be more of a game manager, and maybe overall that's what they're expecting him to be, just to manage the game and not turn the ball over. But it was nice to see, kind of like Aaron Rodgers last week, to show that, hey, I can still ball. And that was pretty good to see. And I definitely thought those two games were edge of your seat thrillers. But let's go ahead and move on. We're going to go to the nailed it, sailed it, failed it segment. If you haven't seen last week's segment on that, and let me explain. Nailed it basically is, as it implies, that the prediction I made for that week 2 game was at least close or pretty close to being right on. Not necessarily just perfect, but nailed it in the sense of I chose the right team to win. Sailed it is if you think of a quarterback who sails a pass over his receiver's head, might be close to catching it. The sailed it segment is more, I could have been right or wrong, but just by a little bit. And there are some things about my prediction that I got right, and there are other things that I did not get right, that I got wrong. And of course, failed it, again, that is, as the name implies, I just completely dropped the ball. My prediction was completely wrong, and definitely did not even come close to getting those games right. But we're going to start with the nailed it. And the first game we're going to start with is the 49ers at the Saints. Now, the 49ers ended up winning this game 26-21. My prediction video, I said this was a tough one to pick because the Saints, I just think they're in the middle of a rebuilding era, and I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. I mean, they lost this game, so they're 0-2, and I just don't see them making the playoffs this year. I see them possibly getting the number 1 pick. If we'll see how that goes, because there are other teams that are also at the bottom, and they don't look like they're playing very well. But I will say one of the surprises in this game was Spencer Rattler. He actually had a decent game at 3 touchdowns. It was 25 for 34, 207 yards, but still 3 touchdowns. That's pretty impressive. Another surprise was Mac Jones for the 49ers. That was one of the reasons I had a little bit of a hard time predicting this game, because I remember hearing that Brock Purdy was going to be out probably 2 to 5 weeks. George Kittle's already on injured reserve. Brandon Ayuk, he was injured. But I was able to get it right. My prediction was that San Francisco would win 23-20. The actual score ended up being 26-21. And Mac Jones actually didn't look too bad. He had 279 yards, also 3 touchdowns, was 26 for 39. And so I think that in the weeks that are ahead, where Brock Purdy will not be playing, he may be able to show that, hey, give me a second chance. If he can really take advantage of this opportunity, maybe there's a team next year, if he does well, that's needing a quarterback and they look his way. But it was good to see him do well. And again, because of the status of Brock Purdy being out and George Kittle really made this game difficult to choose, I want to see if Mac Jones can sustain this success. I think one of the things that really benefits him is that Kyle Shanahan is a great coach. And so I think that it'll help San Francisco be able to compete in their next games until Brock Purdy can come back, and hopefully George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk. But as I predicted, the San Francisco 49ers did win this game. It was a little bit of a different score, 26-21 compared to 23-20, which I predicted. But it was definitely impressive to see these two young quarterbacks, Mac Jones and Spencer Rattler, actually do pretty well. Again, no eye-popping numbers, no Russell Wilson numbers, which we saw in the Dallas-New York Giants game. But still impressive, and definitely kudos to them for showing up and playing ball. The next game I want to talk about is the Rams and the Titans. Listen, the Titans are in rebuild mode. Cam Ward, he's young. He's still learning. I'm hoping that he does well and he has a good career, but it's still too early to tell. He wasn't very efficient. I think he was only 19 for 33, which isn't terrible, but isn't great. Had 175 yards and a touchdown. Tony Pollard helped them a bit in his running with 20 carries and almost 100 yards, 92 yards. Then Calvin Ridley had 3 receptions for 57 yards. But as I said last week in my prediction, the Rams are definitely a lot closer to being a Super Bowl contender than Tennessee is. But I think the future in Tennessee is bright. They can add more pieces and get some good pieces around Cam Ward. And I think they have a bright future ahead of them, but they are still definitely needing to add more pieces to help their offense, help their defense. And so I think they'll be able to do that through the draft and free agency, hopefully. But as of right now, these two teams are definitely at different levels. Matthew Stafford, he was 23 for 33, 298 yards, 2 touchdowns, an interception. Kyron Williams had 17 carries for 66 yards. And Adams had 6 receptions for 106 yards and a touchdown. So it's good to see Devontae Adams have a good game. I think he's found a home there in Los Angeles. And we'll see if this continues. Definitely kind of predicted that the game would go this way. Again, the final score was 33-19. My prediction was that this game would be 38-21. So pretty close, not spot on, but pretty close. But it was definitely the Rams showing that they are the superior team and at a better place right now. But again, for any Titans fans, just hang in there. And I think your future is bright. Let Cam Ward get some experience under his belt, and I think he can definitely be a franchise quarterback if he's developed properly and given time to flourish. Last in this section is the Philadelphia Eagles and Kansas City Chiefs game. This was a defensive battle. As I said last week, I try to keep my fandom out. As a Chiefs fan, I want to choose the Chiefs every week. And like I said, my heart was saying, go Chiefs, but my head was saying Philadelphia probably wins this game. And Philadelphia did win this game. It's by a different score than I predicted. They won 20-17. I predicted that they would win 27-23. There were no eye-popping numbers by either team. Like I said, it was more of a defensive battle. The turning point really was that Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, it looked like the Chiefs were about to score and go up. Instead, the ball bounces off Travis Kelce's hands up into the air and right into the Eagles defenders' arms. And had it not been for an amazing tackle by Josh Simmons, I think that would have been a pick six. Actually, they said that Josh Simmons got up to 18 miles an hour running to track that guy down. And that was very impressive. And he also has been doing really good as the left tackle for the Chiefs. I think they said he has the 3rd best blocking grade, PFF, overall in these first 2 games. So I'll definitely take that, given our issues with the line last year. And really, since Patrick Mahomes has been there, we haven't had a very solid left tackle since Eric Fisher. So I'm glad to see that it looks like Josh Simmons might be our anchor there for the future. Philadelphia, just a championship caliber team, taking advantage of our mistakes, capitalizing on them, learning throughout the game how to adjust. Spags was sending the blitz quite often in this game, and Jalen Hurts finally was able to connect with, I'm trying to remember his name, Devontae Smith. almost scored actually, but he threw up a pass, basically a 50-50 ball, and Devontae Smith was able to get it, and it was somewhere on 2 or 1 yard line, the goal line. And then, of course, the Philadelphia Eagles were able to score and go up 20-10 at that point. And really, with the lack of weapons for Patrick Mahomes, he's led the Chiefs in rushing the past 2 weeks and has not even been close. And I think that's a major problem that I would say they need to get addressed. I don't really think receiver. I was thinking maybe they need to trade for receiver. But given that it looks like Xavier Worthy is going to come back, and at some point Rashee Rice is going to come back after his suspension is over, I think their receiver room is okay. I am much more concerned about their running back room and then their defensive line, because it's hard for them to get pressure without sending the blitz. And of course, when you send blitz, you're risking leaving them hand wide open. And so I think those are the 2 areas of main concern, along with some of the play calling. Honestly, it was a little vanilla, and I just think that opposing defenses are not scared of the Kansas City Chiefs offense anymore, and really haven't been since Tyreek Hill left. And so I think that they need to address, definitely my number 1 priority would be the running back room. I'm hoping Brett Veach can make a move, a trade of some sort that will bring in someone that will elevate the running back room and be more of a threat, because you can't have Patrick Mahomes being your leading rusher. That is too great a risk of injury, and you need someone back there that can really make defenses respect the run game, which will open opportunities in the passing game. They did have opportunities to win this game. They just, against a team like Philadelphia, the defending Super Bowl champs, if you make a mistake, it's going to cost you. And in this case, it definitely did. And so the Kansas City Chiefs are now 0-2 for the first time, I think, since 2014, for the first time in the Patrick Mahomes era. And this is the first time in the Patrick Mahomes era where he's lost 3 in a row, if you include the Super Bowl loss. And so it's unfamiliar territory for the Chiefs. We'll see if they're able to bounce back against the Giants, but they're going to have their hands full, especially if we see the type of offense from the Giants that we did this week against the Cowboys. And they definitely cannot take the Giants for granted, and they're going to need to do their homework, and they're going to need to clean some things up to prevent them from starting 0-3, which would be probably, in my opinion, I don't want to say impossible, a hurdle to overcome, but you've really dug yourself a hole if you start off 0-3. So those were the 3 nailed it games for me. I was hoping to be wrong on the Philadelphia-Kansas City one, but Philadelphia's a great team. Top to bottom, great roster, and well coached. So kudos to them. Hats off to them. And I think, like right now, we'll see how they do, because they have a pretty tough schedule as well. But I never count the Eagles out, the way their defense is able to stymie offenses, and their offense is able to do what they need to win games. All right, next segment is Sailed It. It means I got maybe some aspects of these games right, and then some aspects wrong. It might be margin of victory or something. Usually that's what it is. The margin of victory was much different than what I had predicted. But let's go ahead and take a look at that. The first one is the Giants and Cowboys. It was one of the games of the week. But I had predicted that the Cowboys would win. But my prediction was that they would win 24-17. Obviously, that was not the case. It was a fireworks show on the offense, where both teams, especially in the fourth quarter, I think there's like 41 points put up total by both teams in the fourth quarter alone, and they just let loose, it seemed. and so it was a much higher scoring game than I was anticipating, and much closer, honestly. I didn't think the Giants would keep it very close, but they did, and they almost ended up winning the game. But the Cowboys, Dak Prescott and the Cowboys did just enough to get the win. The Giants are now 0-2, and the Cowboys have even their record at 1-1. It was a really good game. Again, surprised to see Russell Wilson play the way that he did, but happy about that because it shows that he's still got it and can still put up numbers like that when necessary. Unfortunately for him, it comes in a loss, but his numbers were really fantastic. 30 for 41, 450 yards, 3 touchdowns. Was showing off the arm, throwing these long balls. Malik Neighbors really stepping up for him. And I think Malik Neighbors might be someone to keep your eye on. Of course, I mean, we already knew he's super talented, but I think he's going to be climbing the ranks of the wide receiver tier. And I think if he continues to play the way he's been playing, he may soon be considered one of the elite receivers of the NFL. Dak Prescott, impressive. Again, 361 yards, 2 touchdowns. And CeeDee Lamb helping him out. I mean, CeeDee Lamb is he's already one of the elite receivers in the NFL. But such a great game, divisional game. And so it's not always, as we're going to find out later, but a lot of times divisional games are exciting because the teams are familiar with each other. And a lot of times it comes down to the wire. Again, not always, but these are usually pretty exciting to see. The next game that is in the sailed it section is the Patriots and Dolphins. And I honestly, I had zero faith in the Dolphins to do anything after that week 1 shellacking they took at the hands of the Colts. But they were able to put up some points. They put up 27 points on the Patriots, who really, Vrabel is usually known for his defenses and having teams that are defensively stout. They did end up losing the game 33-27, but I honestly thought it was going to be a blowout. In fact, I had the score being 24-10, 14-point win for the Patriots. The final score actually ended up being 33-27. Drake May looked a lot better this week. Not eye-popping numbers, but he had 2 touchdowns and 230 yards on 19 of 23 passing. Did pretty well. He had 2 touchdowns and an interception. 315 yards total on 26 of 32. Tyreek Hill was glad to have a game over 100 yards. He had 6 receptions, 109 yards. While I got the prediction of who would win right, I definitely did not expect the Dolphins, after the way they looked last week, to score 27 points. And frankly, I was thinking when I made the prediction, Patriots scoring 24 points would be on the high end. But here they are, having scored 33 points against Miami. Which, I mean, that's twice in a row, right? Miami defense has given up 33 points, 33-8 in the first week, and then 33-27 this week. At least they kept it closer this week and didn't embarrass themselves like they did in the first week. But I definitely put this game in the sailed it category because of Miami's resilience and ability to bounce back and have a much better game this week than they did last week. Final score again was New England 33, Miami 27. My prediction was New England 24, Miami 10. The next game in this category was the Falcons and Vikings. I chose the Falcons to win, and my score prediction for this game was 28-24. I thought maybe because of the way the Vikings were able to come back and win the game it was actually on Monday, I believe, against the Bears, I thought they would put up a much better fight than they did this game. But the actual score for this game was Atlanta 22, Minnesota 6. Neither quarterback really had fantastic numbers. Michael Penix in the win was 13 of 21 for 135 yards. But he really didn't need to have great numbers because Bijan Robinson had 22 carries for 143 yards. When you have a running back that can carry it for that many yards, then that makes your life a lot easier. I mean, we can see, like I mentioned with the Chiefs, I think their running game needs a lot more help. No opposing defense is really scared of their running game, and so they can focus the majority of their efforts on the passing game. But here, Bijan Robinson helps lighten the load for Michael Penix. Again, 22 carries, 143 yards. J.J. McCarthy had a rough game. He was 11 for 21 with 158 yards, but 2 interceptions. I do believe he got injured and is actually going to be out this upcoming week. And I think Carson Wentz is actually going to be starting for the Vikings. But the Atlanta Falcons were able to contain the Minnesota offense pretty much completely. Jordan Mason only had 9 carries for 30 yards, and Justin Jefferson only had 3 receptions for 81 yards. A rough day for the Minnesota Vikings. I chose correctly in the winner, but I didn't think it would be this lopsided, 22-6. Again, my prediction was 28-24, and definitely that did not end up being the case. All right, next section is failed it. There's one game I want to quickly mention that I failed on this and that I didn't mention in my notes, but I definitely did not expect the Steelers to get walloped the way they did, especially after Aaron Rodgers showed how well he could still play against the Jets last week. But yeah, that was just not a very good showing by the Steelers. So I would probably include that in my failed it section. I just was trying to keep it to 3 teams. So honorable mention on that. And the other one I have to mention, just because I can't stand the Broncos, is that the Colts ended up beating the Broncos. That was another great game, last second field goal. And the Colts were able to pull off a victory on that pretty stout defense. That's one thing for sure Denver has, is a great defense. So it was nice to see the Colts able to defeat the Broncos, go to 2-0, and just slay the donkeys. Whenever the Broncos lose, it's always a good day. And as I said before, they never win again. It'd still be too soon. But the first game in my notes I put on here was the Chicago Bears versus the Detroit Lions. I had the Bears winning, thinking, oh, you know what, maybe Ben Johnson will be a little bit familiar with Dan Campbell, the way he runs the team, and be able to take advantage of that. And absolutely not. That was not the case. Detroit hung 52 points on the Chicago Bears. Chicago was only able to score 21. It was a butt whooping up and down the field. It was bad. My prediction was that the Bears would beat the Lions 30-20. Obviously way off. Caleb Williams had a mediocre game. 19 for 30, 207 yards, 2 touchdowns and interceptions. DeAndre Swift, 12 carries, 63 yards, a touchdown. Rome Odunze, actually, though, he had a pretty great game. He had 7 receptions for 128 yards, 2 touchdowns. I'm interested to see if he continues on this trajectory. He, of course, came out of Washington, was a great receiver there at the University of Washington, and considered one of the top wide receiver prospects in last year's draft. Or not this past year's, but the years before. And he definitely showed flashes of that in this game. But Jared Goff, man, he was on his game. 5 touchdowns, 334 yards, super efficient, 23 of 28. Jahmyr Gibbs, 12 carries, 94 yards, 1 touchdown. You watched him, man, he looks like he makes the other players look like they're moving in slow motion. That's how fast he is. He reminds me a little bit of Jamal Charles, who just had that next gear where he could just really take off. And so he had a really good game, 12 carries, 94 yards. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown, great receiver. He had 3 touchdowns, 115 yards on 9 receptions. And Detroit, their offense was just clicking on all cylinders, which really helped their defense stymie Chicago. And it was just a beatdown from beginning to end. I'm sure that's not what Ben Johnson had envisioned, and definitely wasn't what I thought was going to happen, but they proved me wrong. The Detroit Lions did, and kudos to them. Looks like they're back on track, and if their offense could look like that, they're going to be scary. Interestingly enough, I must confess something. I'd initially thought when they said that their new offensive coordinator was named Johnny Morton, I was thinking of the wide receiver that actually used to play for Detroit. His name was Johnny Morton. He actually played for Kansas City for a while as well. And so I thought, oh, that's interesting. He's back. He's the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions. And no, it's actually someone else whose name is John Morton as well. And so I thought I would mention that. It was just funny because I thought for sure when I heard them call him Johnny Morton. I was like, oh yeah, I remember Johnny Morton, but a different John Morton altogether. But yeah, kudos to the Detroit Lions. We'll see how they do against a high caliber team in the Baltimore Ravens. It's going to be the Sunday night football game. That should be Sunday night or Monday night. I'm trying to remember. Either way, it's going to be one of the primetime games, and it's going to be phenomenal. The next game on this list, thought for sure would be a hangover game for the Bills, was absolutely not. It was the Bills and Jets. I predicted the Jets would win and catch the Bills off guard. I made the mistake again of referencing past years. I remember a couple years ago, the first game of the week, where Aaron Rodgers unfortunately tore his Achilles, the Jets were still able to win that game. And I remember it was Xavier Gibson, who they actually just cut. But in that game, he ran back a punt for the winning touchdown to win the game. So I thought maybe the Jets catch the Buffalo Bills on a hangover after that incredible game between the Bills and the Ravens on Sunday Night Football last week. But nope, the Bills were focused. They came out and smashed the Jets 30-10. Josh Allen, he didn't have the best game, but while this game wasn't playing in my area, from what I understand, he actually got his nose broken. So I'm sure that probably had something to do with it, because that just doesn't sound like fun. I remember when it happened to Ben Roethlisberger, when the Steelers and Ravens would have these incredible, just slug it out matchups. And I remember there was one game where he ended up having his nose broken as well. But they were able to get the job done. James Cook had an amazing game for 21 carries with 132 yards, 2 touchdowns. Really helped carry that offense. Joshua Palmer was their leading receiver with 2 receptions for 47 yards. Justin Fields, I think that was one of the reasons I had picked the Jets to win, was because of how well he played in the loss last week to Pittsburgh. But he ended up having to leave because he was in concussion protocol. And sounds like he probably won't be able to play this week either. So Tyrod Taylor will be there. He's a good veteran quarterback. I think that he's a good option to have as a backup. I think he'll still provide the Jets an opportunity to win. But it was unfortunate to hear that Justin Fields went down with a concussion. I think part of that is also like with the Chiefs, where he was their leading rusher this game. Justin Fields was with 5 carries for 49 yards. When your quarterback's leading rusher, there's always that extra risk of injury because he's running the ball more. And you really want your running backs to be the ones that are your leading. Like for Buffalo, James Cook, 21 carries, 132 yards, 2 touchdowns. And then receiving, Garrett Wilson, 4 receptions for 50 yards. But it was really just a beatdown. Buffalo showed why they are the kings of the AFC East. And it looks like they had no hangover whatsoever from that epic game from last week. Yes, final score, Buffalo Bills 30, New York Jets 10. My prediction was Buffalo 31, New York Jets 33. And as you can tell, way off. Lastly, this is what I was mentioning earlier, that division games usually tend to be close. And I thought this one would be close, but I was way off. The Cleveland Browns and Baltimore Ravens. I had said in my prediction that the Cleveland Browns tend to be that team in their division that can sometimes play spoiler. And I thought maybe that I didn't think they would win, but I thought they would keep it a lot closer than what it was. My prediction was Baltimore 27, Cleveland 24. That, as you well know, was not the case. Baltimore ran away with it. They won the game 41-17, and it just shows the separation in where these teams are at in their division. Cleveland, unfortunately, has been the punching bag of the AFC North for a while now, especially after that whole Deshaun Watson trade that really has handcuffed them and their ability to bring in talent. They really took a risk with that, not only because of all the off-the-field issues that surrounded Deshaun Watson, but the fact that he hadn't played for a few years because of what was going on. It just didn't pay off. And they were hoping that he would show flashes or be the quarterback that he was when he played for Houston, and that just never ended up being the case. They're paying him a lot of guaranteed money, and it's really handcuffed them in their ability to compete. And we can see that in a game like this. Joe Flacco, 25 for 45 for 199 yards, had a touchdown and interception. Quinshon Judkins, his debut, 10 carries, 61 yards. And Jerry Jeudy, 4 receptions and 51 yards. One of the players I really like from Cleveland, though, that I was hoping, I think I mentioned that he didn't have that great of a game this game, but last week he showed flashes that he could end up being a really good running back, was Dylan Sampson. But yeah, I just feel bad for the Browns and the Browns fans. My dad is a Browns fan, has been a Browns fan all his life. And it's just been pretty much misery ever since they left Cleveland and became the Ravens when they came back. They've had very few winning seasons, very little playoff success. But on Baltimore side, they look good. Baltimore, of course, led by Lamar Jackson. He was 19 and 29, 225 yards with 4 touchdowns. Derrick Henry was actually pretty limited. He had 11 carries, but only for 23 yards. And then Zay Flowers had 7 receptions for 75 yards. Baltimore really annihilated Cleveland in this game, and it was nowhere near what I thought it would be. The Browns didn't keep it as close, nearly as close as I thought they would. Even though I chose Baltimore to win, I didn't think they would win or cover. I remember they were favored by 12.5 points, and I said, there's no way they win by 12.5 points. And I was right. They won by more. But yeah, so that was the last game in the failed it section. I like to try to do 3 games for each section, and I'll probably continue to do that. But I appreciate you guys joining me and letting me share my thoughts on week 2 and what happened. I'm going to be making another video soon on my week 3 picks, and so keep an eye out on that. But I appreciate you joining me today and allowing me to be a part of your guys' lives. Thank you so much for the support again. If you haven't subscribed, please go ahead and subscribe and like the video. That really helps my channel out. And I appreciate you guys so much. Remember that Jesus loves you. Keep him first. In these dark days that we live in, Jesus shines the brightest, and it's him that we need to cling to. And I just hope that you know that you are loved and cared for, and that there is hope even in the darkness, and his name is Jesus. God bless you guys. Have a great one, and I'll see you in the next video.